everybody, how's it going? We're shooting this video live-ish. We're on 5th Avenue outside Music City Center, and I am here with my friend, Big Daddy Cool, Johnny De La Rocca, John Pyka. Some of you know, both of us, you know that we go back a little ways in local grassroots entertainment, and we're both, you know, native guys in the scene here. And I've been after him for a few weeks. We've got to talk about the future of conventions, fandom, entertainment, live theater, movie theaters, the whole nine yards. And so thank you for joining me. I know that you've had a busy schedule lately.
Yeah, thanks for having me. And it's weird to be on somebody else's show for a change.
Right. Yeah, I wanted to do this in person. You know, we've been trading enough information to be pretty sure that we're both very symptom-free, and he's got some family that he has to make sure he looks out for, and I try to be pretty paranoid. So we're both pretty comfortable sitting here close to each other on what is arguably a desolate downtown landscape in Nashville.
Yeah.
Got a little live music across the street. It wouldn't be Nashville if we didn't.
But you'll notice that the venue where the live music is being played is desolate.
Very, very light. There may be 2 or 3 tables in there. And of course, that's going to be the case in a lot of cases. Now, the weekends are still kind of hopping, but Nashville's struggling with leadership on how to enforce all the mandates.
Yeah, we're here on Wednesday night, and 6 months ago, a Wednesday night would have been the same as a Friday or Saturday night. Wall-to-wall, shoulder-to-shoulder people.
Yeah, yeah. This kind of weather would be a boon for our downtown scene, and it just speaks to the general subject matter of, you know, why we're here in the first place.
And I've seen, since we've been sitting here, I've seen one guy walk by, and maybe 2 or 3 cars.
I had to run back to the car and grab some more equipment, and I passed like 2 guys. And you've got a lot of, like, I used to work downtown, and you've worked plenty, and you still work downtown with Ghost Tours.
Yep.
And, you know, this is, it's not normal. You stumble over quite a few people when you're down here. So it's an interesting world that we're seeing unfold. And part of that is through entertainment and live events. Obviously, to state clearly what we already know, right? Everything took a hit.
Yeah.
Every single thing took a hit. But we've been kind of bantering in the background about what's going to happen at the end of this, what's going to happen when we come out of the other side of this. How do things look now? How are things going to look? And something that I really kind of noticed, I had, over the weekend, I had coffee with a buddy of mine his whole company is in the entertainment industry. And he talked about just the complete decimation of this business.
Yeah.
And lighting, sound, all of that. And really, you saw a lot of this on social media with the whole red alert thing. You may have seen friends that are in the production business posting photos and talking about the red lighting that they're putting in empty theaters and on the outsides of buildings. It was just a visibility thing, because some people don't understand exactly how crazy bad the impact has been for live events and performers.
Yeah, and you know, my day job, you know, I'm involved in entertainment from morning to night.
Kind of a 360.
Yeah. My day job, I'm working with music superstars. It's ironic that we're sitting across the street from the Country Music Hall of Fame, because some of those superstars I counsel every day. And you know, big tours have been canceled, and a lot of people are saying, well, 2021 will be back to normal. A lot of these huge tours, they're not planning on coming back until 2022. And we've talked to venues like convention centers that are saying maybe not until 2022.
Right.
And while the rest of the economy will bounce back pretty quickly, that live event, live entertainment economy has just been tanked.
Yeah.
And there really is no light at the immediate tunnel.
And for those that know, you know, a lot of my story and where our stories cross over really in a lot of ways, this very plaza is a complicated location for the biography of me, right? Like, this was the venue that my biggest event was promised an opportunity to utilize at some point in time, whenever it was complete. And that would have been the year after we were in the Nashville Convention Center. We were invited on stage, and a lot of people have a narrative that some of my own issues that have come up over time and been vastly exaggerated led to some kind of disconnect. The reality is Nashville has a very different relationship than most cities with its convention center. So we're right here next to Music City Center. We're in a plaza that at one point in time I thought I would turn into the location of the rave that we would have at our event. I thought we would do an outdoor rave, and we would light up each of these balconies with different DJs as they change sets. It was going to be rad. It was going to be expensive and rad. And that's the kind of vision that doesn't really exist in a lot of cases in fandom, but we were going to bring that. But the organization that owns and runs, or not owns, but runs the building behind us is different from the Convention Visitors Corporation, which most cities call a bureau, Convention Visitors Bureau. Nashville's very, very unique in that. And something that a lot of people don't understand that I think is kind of a good baseline understanding when you're talking about live events in Nashville, that is very different, and it is a product of lobbying by Opryland back in the day. And I don't know if you know this background, if we've ever talked about this, but Opryland was a thing before Nashville really had much of an apparatus for tourism. When Nashville realized, oh shit, we need to get on that train, Opryland heavily pushed for a separation of powers so that they could compete with an independent corporation running a big venue. In those times it was the convention center. So we have this weird setup where our convention visitors people have absolutely no power over the boss here. And I love this venue. I supported this venue from day one. Myself and several of my staff people from conventions came to the public meetings to draw sketches and brainstorm and use post-it notes and talk about what we want in a new convention center. 100% support this and the success story that this building has. I support the people that work in it. I support all the economic impact of it. The only problem I have with this place is the top boss. The CEO of this particular building has a bias against geeks that was developed through a lot of misnomers over the years, but then sold out to the big money like Wizard and other big shows.
Yep.
We're going to cover all of those concepts in this discussion, but it's important to understand that, you know, well, doesn't Lucas have bad blood about the Music City Center? No, Lucas does not. Lucas loves this testament to what we can do in Nashville, which is in fact ahead on its payments on bonds, to such an extent they were able to finish additional build-outs that they cut from the budget. The management has a bias and a lack of understanding. And incidentally, while you've been paying your taxes and you may be unemployed, that guy's been sitting around the corner in an office making almost $400,000 a year, still with an empty building doing no work, when a lot of you were laid off from doing no work. So this is a very complicated political concept, but it affects our live events business because hundreds of people were laid off in this building. They can't do work because there are no conventions in this building. It was closed as an emergency hospital for a period of time, which is exactly what large public spaces could be used for at the time. And all the while, executive management is still collecting a fat paycheck, not taking a single hit, while the rest of us take hits and face challenges.
Well, and that's not just happening in Nashville, Lucas.
No.
That's happening in New York, and Chicago, and New Orleans, and LA. Everywhere is facing the same thing. Now, their structure might be different in the management, but what we're experiencing in Nashville is being experienced all across the country.
Absolutely.
And in some places they've been hit even worse, like New York. Broadway. There's talk now among my friends in New York that Broadway may not recover.
Right.
That so many people are leaving in mass exodus just to find work somewhere doing something that, 5-10 years from now, we may be talking about Broadway somewhere else and not in New York.
Broadway may not be really the thing that it is now at the other end of the crisis at hand. And it's fair to say a lot of things are like that, right? Nashville, LA, Atlanta, any other center of production, even stuff that's not live has suffered greatly. My dad was a career stagehand in the IATSE, and for those that are, you would know, but a lot of people don't know. When you watch a movie and there's a weird 5-pointed ribbon logo, that's that union. It's the union that your friends that are stage craft, stage hands, carpentry, painting, sets, etc. all those people belong to that general union, and that's been hit ridiculously badly hard. And I'm just glad my dad's retired. I can't imagine if this were just 10 years ago, Dad wouldn't be retired yet. You'd be almost retired. And I can't imagine how it is for some of these people that are about to retire. They're about to enjoy the pension that my dad enjoys, only to have the whole rug pulled out from under them by this pandemic. And right now they're not working.
And I talk to them every day. I talk to those people in the music industry. Yes, I deal with superstars, but I also deal with those lighting techs and those sound engineers and you know, the road managers. And you know, one of the biggest tours on the planet is Taylor Swift. She employs almost 400 people in her tour group. You know, and all of them were let go. And
not because anybody wanted to.
No,
just fundamentals. I mean, cash in, cash out. It's reality.
And some of these big superstars. I mean, I'm talking, you know, multi-million-dollar Grammy Award winners, big arena tour artists kept their employees on as long as they could.
Right.
And then it came a point where it's no longer, you know, financially feasible on the country's or on the company's behalf, and they've got to cut them loose. And we're seeing the second wave right now in the entertainment industry of that phenomenon.
Arguably, a lot of these people kept on longer than most corporations.
Yes.
Most businesses threw in the towel. They don't have the same spirit that entertainment has. Entertainment understands that a certain amount of it is gig work. I mean, hell, my dad, he made a living as the sole working parent as a stagehand, and a lot of it was arguably something that wasn't supposed to be a full-time job. He just managed to take the right gigs, and he managed to keep an income. Well, and a lot of people function like that, and these people tried. These artists tried their best, you know, to do what they could do, but in a lot of cases, it's not possible.
Well, and you know, we don't want to get into politics, but thank God that Congress and the president were able to come together on a unemployment package that included, for the first time in United States history, 1099 gig economy workers.
And you guys out there know, he and I are on two different sides of the fence here, but we're civil and we're friends, and that's the way most people should be. Well, on this one topic, it's a big win for everybody.
Yeah.
It really worked out. I mean, it worked out for the time, right? We want more, we want to re-up, we want to figure out what the next stage is, but that is indeed historic, and hopefully it sets a precedent, because that always was a terrifying thing about gig work in the first place.
Yes. And I've been a gig economy worker most of my life, and you know, if you manage it properly, it's great. But if you don't have something to fall back on, or if you don't have another, that entrepreneurial spirit, and that's what saved me is,
right.
I have an entrepreneurial spirit. But a lot of, artists and performers, they don't. They're going from gig to gig to gig and enjoying success, but just holding on till the next gig. They're one gig away from being homeless.
Right. Well, and there's a lot of connectivity to that, right? Like, we're sitting in a district where if there's a concert across the street at Bridgestone, there's a fallout of the economy that happens when there's no concert, right? If I went to a concert at Bridgestone, I typically would have pizza before the show right here in the corner of Music City Center. A shockingly affordable pizza joint here. And I would probably park in the Omni with the valet, because I learned that if you just said, hey, I'm here for an event, you didn't have to specify what event. You could park short term for like $15 and get valet, or maybe 30, but still, it's a concert night. It's right here. It's great. So there's all this business that doesn't happen. There's tips that don't happen. There's fees that don't happen. There's food service and tips that don't happen, all because there's a concert canceled. And that's not to lecture. Everybody understands the economy is interconnected, or anybody that has the intelligence to talk about it. But there's so much drastic fallout. I mean, in an entertainment visitation city like Nashville, every little thing really does land. And that's to say nothing of the nationwide impact.
Yeah. I will say the good thing that has happened is affordable parking is available again.
Yeah, we just park for free around the corner.
Where it would normally, on a night where the Predators are playing or there's a concert across the street, we might pay $60.
And we wouldn't be the lucky ones to find the freebie.
No.
I mean, where were we? We're 6:48. We got here like 6:15. That would have already been gone, definitely. Another interesting anecdote about this location, the last time I was down here, I was having breakfast and coffee right over there at Omni. Mm-hmm. And I was eating breakfast at like 8 a.m. with a friend of mine that's in Chattanooga. His whole company does live event social media. Now, as a guy that's produced lots and lots of live events, the one thing that you always screw up is social media. You always set out with these bold ideas. We're going to have a hashtag. We're going to encourage people. We're going to have a volunteer that takes photos. None of that ever works out the way you think it is. If you're an aspiring event person and you think it's magic, it's not. It never looks the way. You always sit there on Monday going, that sucks. That sucks too.
You know,
his company does that. They were the entity for the SEC.
Okay.
They were the guys. And when I had breakfast with him, I was already out of a job. I was looking for a job. I had a satchel full of resumes. I was going to deliver to certain key places around town that I applied. But the first thing was breakfast, and he said, I got to be at a press conference at 9, or not a press conference, but a meeting for press at 9. And they're going to tell us what the new plan is for the SEC. And I suspect they're going to explain to us how they're going to play the tournament without an audience. By the time I sat down after handing out resumes, by the time I sat down for lunch at a sports bar in the village, the headline was no more SEC tournament. And I texted my friend, I said, well, that escalated quickly. And he said, yeah, no shit, I'm trying to figure out what I'm doing with my company for the next several months, because it's all they did. They employed half a dozen full-time people, half a dozen contractors, and all of a sudden, done. Nothing. One morning meeting. One pandemic.
I'll tell you where there's a huge opportunity in the entertainment industry for a company like that to pivot and do social media events for live performers. Look,
yeah.
I've got a lot of performers who want to do live streaming events. They don't have a clue how to do that. You know, they're used to showing up, doing the gig, and going home, and there's an opportunity for someone to say, look, we'll create the space, whether that's at your studio or whatnot. We'll create the ticketing mechanism. We'll create everything to make it turnkey for you. You don't have to be a marketer. You don't have to be an internet.
Advice.
You know, there's a huge opportunity there right now.
Well, I wore this shirt today for a reason.
Yep.
This is the shirt from Live on My Green. This was the arguably brilliant conversion of what should have been one of our staple music events. It's a free downtown music festival every weekend leading up to Labor Day, and then Labor Day weekend at Public Square Park, hosted by Lightning 100, our only truly independent radio station. Lots of great acts. This year they converted and they changed the branding, which I thought, as a brand guy, I thought that was brilliant. So instead of Live on the Green, it's Live on My Green. I bought the shirt to support anything I could, right? You could basically host your own mask-friendly, social distance-friendly backyard version of Live on the Green. Have up to 25 friends over if you're going to be in league with Metro ordinances. Play the music. Have food. They had food deals where you can have food delivered by the vendors and sponsors. You could buy merch. And they had live performances recorded from all kinds of places, including a lot of backstage Bonnaroo stuff, a lot of exclusive stuff, hard to find live performances. And they had some live streams. They had a lot of audio streams that were live musicians playing wherever they were. They were speaking in real time about where we are as a culture and all this challenge. It was a great lineup of music and a brilliant move to change that from a live event into something that was virtual. But only because of the talent inside.
Yeah.
And I'm not just saying this to kiss ass. Brian Waters is a friend of mine. He runs all their digital. I get it. But really, only because of talent inside. What you say is totally the deal for a lot of people. They don't have any idea how to do this.
No.
And they've tried to go at it with virtual, but it ends up being lame. And it's because they don't have professional advice. So that's actually a pretty good
and you know, there are these theaters and venues sitting empty that don't need to be empty. You can still do your event. You just can't have an audience.
Right.
Or if you pivot and do that virtual audience, then you can still have the production. You can still have the venue. It's just where the live audience is participating changes.
And even with a 25 limit, or now it's 125 for certain ceremonies, there are ways that some of these events really could go at like a VIP experience, a VIP level. You know, you're paying, you know, maybe it's $125, $200. You're paying top dollar. But you're getting into the venue. You get to see the performance. There's an audience, which we, you know, you and I as guys have been on stage, and you're on stage a lot more than me. The audience makes a world of difference. The biggest thing I wonder about a lot of these, like the NBA and wrestling, is, okay, that's cool. We did technical things, which I think are very commendable. But really, is it the same? It's not. It's not the same energy. You do a magic trick in front of an empty room. Who cares?
Yeah, well, exactly, and I did.
Or the reaction is delayed. You do the big wow, and then you got to wait for the stream to loop back to the reaction. In wrestling, you can't really have that reaction. You got to slam on the mat, and now the reaction. It's very different. And so, being able to offer like a VIP level of exposure that works. It only works, though, if the venues understand. And something I've struggled with over the years, you know, I like to explain to people doing fan cons, venues just make it up. They make it up. They decide what they're going to charge you. Literally just pull it out of the thin air. This venue behind us easily would have been twice as much as the old venue. And that's just based on a decision on what they think they can get. I always tell Fandom folks, your convention's going to pay whatever a salesperson imagines they can make by selling a wedding every day, maybe twice a day, in their ballroom at their hotel. So if they think they can rent that hotel for 25 grand 2 times a day, 3 days in a row, they're going to charge you $150,000 if they can get away with it. So it's always a very liquid thing. There's no base rate that the citizen in the city can depend on to rent their venue, or even a private venue.
Well, I'll tell you, the silver lining in this is, you know, when venues start to reopen, and, you know, I think your notes talk about, you know, Dragon Con going virtual. You know, they didn't have a choice. The organizers of Dragon Con didn't have a choice in that. The hotels were shut down and weren't going to let any major events in there.
Right.
And what the silver lining is, even when events come back in 2021 or 2022, venues will still have, they will have sat empty for so long, and a lot of the events that people have done traditionally for years, we're talking about weddings, family reunions, graduations, a lot of those are going to back away from the big, expensive venues.
They will have found another way. People are still graduating.
Yes.
People are still getting married. They're still finding the rural wedding venue that'll let them skirt some rules or don't have any rules. They have 100 people. Everybody wears a mask. Everything's fine. Venue owner doesn't care. Those people have found a different economy.
Yes.
The hotels may be more thirsty.
And so we're going to see a lot of great deals.
Right.
On event space in the next,
I'm thinking 90s and early
years.
2000s kind of rates are going to come back.
Yeah.
Which was how we built MTAC. I mean, we built MTAC and GMX. When I ran those events, they were built on thirst. They were built on happening in a post 9/11 oh shit bubble for venues, where they were just trying to do whatever it took to get business. It ended up creating sticker shock, and it ended up creating the shrewd business decisions I had to make that now the people living in the lap of luxury that inherited those, they don't understand those times. They don't understand those struggles. They don't know what it took to make things successful despite all of the variables. But I think you're right. There's going to be almost a fire sale, an eagerness to get people, you know, warm bodies, especially civic venues, especially places that had to justify their existence to the taxpayers. Places like this that are ahead of the game, they're going to start to get behind the game a little bit, and they're going to need the business. And where they sold us out as locals to the national big money, they may be amicable to the local smaller money.
Well, and
that depends, of course, on local small money surviving, and we're going to talk about that too.
Well, and in the geek fandom community, in that economy, there are hundreds and hundreds and hundreds, maybe thousands of conventions that were shut down this year.
Yep.
That I guarantee will never come back.
I don't see it.
And that's not a bad thing. That may actually be a good thing for the community. And a lot of those organizers, we've talked about this before, are sitting back and they're going,
right.
Thank God COVID came and saved our ass from major financial ruin.
Let's get real, right? You've got people that never wanted to do what they're doing. They had it dropped in their lap. I'm not even going to bother naming names. Enough people watching us in our bubble and enough people observing Fandom. You know who these people are. There are people that never wanted to do what they were doing. They were forced to do it. There are people that have had kids. Their life has changed. Now they spent a year at home with real life, doing remote work, some of them remote school, some of them rookie parents, first time in, first year of a kid. They don't want to come back. They're going to be too tired. They're going to realize the values that I realized when everything went sideways for me. I took a big stand the first day. The next day I woke up and looked at my son and decided, I'm not going to fight with these petty people. I have a family and I have a life. And these people and their weird little nerd war, they're not worth it to me over my family. I'll find another route. And I did. And I abandoned the fight that I was relentlessly unforgiven by at least half the people for not sticking with, because I wanted to just, everything I care about is right here. I don't need these people. And then you're going to have people that they were in hock. Their literal financial well-being was being destroyed by their repeated propping up of their convention. And now they have an out.
Yep.
Now they can say, oh, darn, COVID ruined us. We've already seen it with multiple Fandom events.
Yep,
not just in Nashville, but a lot of them are in Nashville, who conveniently took the out. They had no work done. They had no planning done. They had no capable people. And they just basically were able to take the COVID pass, and say, hey, that's cool. We can't do it because of COVID. Some of them were straight with people, and they said, okay, we're probably not going to do it. Maybe we'll do virtual. And then some of them were a little bit frustrating. They said maybe we'll do something later, and then they just said never mind. We all knew they would, but they didn't come out with it. And then there were people that just blew it, just totally didn't say a word until COVID showed up, and then they just said, hey, look, COVID, we're out. All convenient excuses. One of the reasons why I've made a very concerted effort with the Nashville Zombie Walk, which is one of my events I still have, we've been very, very transparent. If you guys can help our city get to where it needs to be, we can have a zombie walk. We even set a decision day for later this month. We're going to make a decision on how we're going to proceed based on Nashville's status. Until then, please wear your mask. We've been making it very clear it's up to the fans to help support what needs to happen. So basically,
I'm the anti-mask or conservative.
Yeah,
I've been wearing a mask since day one.
Left and right here, but we both tend to agree that if the man was going to try to suppress you, hiding half your identity wouldn't be the first way they did it.
A lot of those con organizers were doing it out of a sense of obligation or duty. And so they've got this massive weight just removed off of them.
And you know what? If that's what they want to do, if they want to throw the towel in, they want to surrender, they want to cop out, I mean, I'm not going to fault that.
No.
At least it's honest. It's the first time some of these people have been honest in 5-6 years.
Yeah.
So good for them.
And if Walker, Stalker, and FanFest have just held on for a few more months, they could have done the same thing and saved themselves a lot of legal. Wait, did I just name names?
But that's okay, because that's the gray area. That's the weird place where a good fan culture met a really odd, maybe even misinterpreted corporate culture. Somebody got in over their head, but that's an example. Like, you're in over your head, you created this thing, it exploded in your face, and you didn't surround yourself with the talent to make it successful. But COVID isn't out. Let's get out of here. But, there's a lot of that. There's, I don't expect, I would say, easily half of the Fandom events are gone.
Yeah.
In Nashville, we've already had one Fandom event whose new management has continued to lie to people and say it would be re-upped, right? And we've had another that everybody knew was on tentative footing, and another that was tiny and almost dead, almost rescued, and now almost dead again. I don't think that stuff is going to survive. I would be surprised, and now we do have to name names to have the conversation. I'll be surprised if MTAC survives. But GMX has the ultimate out to never talk about it again, never re-promise to return. Hypericon,
they don't survive.
I mean, what are you going to do? You don't have anything. But there's other stuff that blows my mind. Maker Faire is a great example. Should be a successful recipe to continue, pick right back up where it left off. Maybe it will. It'll be a question of leadership and a question of the dicey budget kind of thing, but I think that's an event that can. Obviously, Live on the Green, pick right back up. Why? Professional management, full-grown adults, people that know what they're doing, it'll pick right back up. Some of these cons that were promised for Nashville, I don't know, and I don't even know these people. I don't know Nashville Comic-Con. You know them a little bit better than me.
Yeah.
I don't know if that can work. It might. This may be the landscape in which they settle in. And the big question when we talk about fandom is, what is that future? What comes into the void? And that's a big thing that I contemplate all the time.
Yeah, you know, we just did a little con that was had a big feeling up in Gallatin. Town Square Records and Comics hosted a mini Comic-Con with 15, 16 vendors.
Yeah.
And some artists and crafts, folks, geeky artisans. And it was very small, but it was a big deal.
Yep.
It felt like a big deal because we have been without anything for 6 months. And so the smallest...
The starvation of the fandom is real.
Yeah,
it's
and people came out. They had a great time. We, adhered to mask ordinances. And I really feel like for the next maybe 5 years, that's going to be more the trend.
So you're thinking grassroots is where it's going to be.
Yeah, and I've said that for years, that the con bubble would burst eventually. Right. I had no idea that a pandemic would cause it.
I think everybody that, like I referenced, full-grown adults with professional capabilities, I think everybody knew that the con bubble couldn't sustain. There were too many fan-run cons, coast to coast. There were too many that were born of petty, stupid reasons. There were too many spin-off cons. Looking at you, Ohio and Florida. Like, for my whole time coming up through Anime Con world, bringing MTAC to the peak of its success, we always heard about these other towns where people split off. And that was something that a lot of people told me when things went south with the interpersonal politics and all the drama. They said, why don't you start your own con? You could take at least half of those people with you. Yes, I could. But is it good for the fandom? Is it good for my city? And is it worth my pain? Because I built something from 700 attendees to 10,000 attendees. It's never been duplicated. Why would I want to have to do that again? I'm older now. I got more stuff going on. I value my dollar more. I have a son. I don't want to do this BS.
Well, and then you came in to an experience with about 100, 50 to 100 people, and grew that by what, 400%?
Yeah. So it was not necessary, and I didn't want to be one of those states. I didn't want to be one of those places where when you say fandom about Florida or Ohio, and there are other states, I'm not just picking on them, those are the places I've been. People always say, oh yeah, so-and-so got pissed at so-and-so, and they started their own convention, and now we have 3. Like, that's a dumb reason to start a con. You should never start a con because of some petty infighting.
Well, I mean, that happened in down in Biloxi, Mississippi. You had, Gulf Coast Con, and some people got their feelings hurt, and they started their own Geekonomicon. They had one good
better
first
name.
Year. Yeah, Geekonomicon. What a great name, isn't it?
That's a good name.
But then the second year, they tried to become a megacon in their second year and got in way over their heads, and the organizers basically took what money was in the till and ran.
So what interests me is the people that have made a success story out of this challenge, right? You've got way back in the year at this point. You participated. I participated in COVID Con. Mm-hmm. Neat concept, very grassroots, basic fandom con, streaming.
Yep.
And I would argue that it was a one of a couple of pace setters that kind of said, "Here's this idea you can do." Then we saw the others come along, and they kind of cribbed off of that to some extent. But I always held faith that if anybody can pull this off virtually, it's Dragon Con. We just came off of that. Just had Dragon Con, goes virtual. I worked 19 years in Dragon Con. I entered in VIP services. I was there for the co-creation of DC TV, Dragon Con TV, which became the videography department. And then a couple years ago, I stepped back to just attending after 19 years of working. I've gotten used to the vacation of going to the con. I would work for the con again, and everybody knows this. Garrett Wong that runs Star Trek programming. I would join Trek Track if it was needed and helpful, but I'm in the camp of people that always said, hey, if you stop working, you're going to get addicted to it and love being an attendee, and I can see that. So, you know, I did the virtual attendee thing. I tried to cheerlead everything I could. And even as much as there are people that belong to the drama bubble in the videography team, that's the team. I knew that team had the talent and resources and skills to make the virtual con happen. Now, was it DC Fandom with famous people talking about really well-known stuff and world premiere trailers? No. But as far as setting the bar for large fandom events going virtual, they definitely accomplished that. I think there could have been more done, but I'm not prepared to tear down anything they did. What I can't stand is people, as far as I know, New York just threw in the towel. As far as I know, New York didn't do anything, and I can't wrap my head around that.
And
I didn't see San Diego's stuff. They did some stuff. I didn't really see it.
Like, just no big events, no big announcements.
What's crazy is that proves what I'm thinking. I'm concerned. Well, I'm both excited and concerned. Like, for fandom, I'm concerned, but for the industry and the world of being a fan, I'm concerned that what DC has learned through Fandom is going to affect how things proceed from now on.
What did they learn?
I think they're going to have all the data. I don't know if it's successful. I'm not on the inside, but DC's got the data. They're going to be able to look at it and decide, can we deliver a virtual fan experience directly to the fans? And to me, DC Fandom is to fandom conventions what HBO Direct is to the cable carrier. I think there's a potential that the chummy relationship of success that San Diego has enjoyed for years and years may collapse in the preference that the studios can do this shit directly on their own. They don't need the middleman. They don't need the travel. At most, you may find San Diego gets the exclusive webcast that weekend from the cast of a show who can do it from their home. They don't have to leave home anymore. The studio gets to keep all the grandiose pop. And then Monday or Tuesday morning, that's for free on YouTube from the studio's channel, where bang, 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 they've monetized the hell out of it.
Well, and I know there was a lot of hype around Fandom. I did not watch any of the programming because I called BS on the entire thing. Because a week...
There was a certain amount of that.
Because a week before, 2 weeks before, Warner Brothers, like, gutted DC Comics. They laid off over 3,000 employees at Warner Brothers. And at DC Comics, they laid off 86. Yeah. 86 of their top-level executives. They announced that they were no longer going to create original programming for DC All Access. That it was moving to HBO.
Right.
And, you know, it seemed to me like that was horrible timing going into DC Fandom. So I'm like, okay,
so kind of because they really should have done it earlier and let a dead zone happen, and then everybody's excitement about Fandom would have.
Yeah, so I'm like,
it came in tainted.
What am I going to tune in to see announcements about that? Oh, Wonder Woman is actually going to be released in the theaters, but later this year. But we're still not really sure of the exact date, because everyone's really looking at the two movies that are kind of setting the pace, Mulan and Tenet,
right.
And seeing how that's going to work. But, you know, for DC fans, now the rumor is, because they laid off editor-in-chief Bob Harris, that Warner Brothers, AT&T, who bought Warner Brothers, it's a big convoluted thing, they have no interest in the print publication application to DC Comics. They just want the IPs of the characters to do movies. Yeah, but the problem is, you know, those movies depend on the source material at the end of the day.
Right. We're going to eventually run out of storylines.
Yes.
For movies. Now, I wonder if there's a solution to potentially license out the characters in the same way that, like, Sony has a license on Spider-Man.
Well, that is happening.
They license Batman to some comic book publisher.
Yes, and that is already happening.
But the stories automatically belong to DC Warner to use later if they want, or some kind of BS.
Yeah, so here's what's happening right now in both camps. Marvel has started licensing their characters to IDW, and that happened starting about 2 years ago.
Okay.
But IDW's Marvel line, Marvel Adventure lines, have expanded, and they also license the couple of Star Wars titles and all of the Disney character IPs through IDW. And I think that's the future of Marvel publishing, is licensing their characters out.
And I guess that kind of works. I mean, IDW did Transformers for a lot of years,
and
they did better than Marvel did with Transformers directly.
Yeah, and they do G.I. Joe and Ghostbusters right now.
They take more chances. Like the independent people take chances with
and they focus on storytelling.
Right.
And not, spectacle so much. So the deal that DC Comics made was with Penguin Random House.
Okay.
And so Penguin Random House was originally a distribution deal, but now it's morphed into a distribution and licensing deal. And so you're going to see a lot of DC property published by Penguin Random House distributed to the general mass market, not comic specialty retail stores.
Okay.
So it's,
it's a mixed bag. It might damage the comic store, but bolster the imminent failure of Borders, for example,
yes,
or whatever, Barnes and Noble, etc. So my thing that I'm wondering about is, these juggernauts, will they realize that being in control of the property and the content, and these fandom events didn't really make a dent, but maybe DC Fandom did? I mean, imagine what Disney could do with that. Imagine Disney taking D23, consumerizing it, streaming it, giving a lot of exclusive content.
I would watch D23.
Yeah, or Celebration. I mean, I'm not advocating that there should be a substitute or a lack of Star Wars Celebration by any means. It's one of my favorite ideas in fandom. I've never been. I'd love to go. Every time it's close by, I decide I can't. And every time I decide I can, it's too far away.
I'm right there with you.
It's beautiful, though. I think it's one of the best events that's around in fandom. And, I still lament BotCon going away. I loved that there was an annual Transformer convention. I think that could return. But I worry about the big moguls, the big power players, realizing that they can take it direct. And if they don't own their own physical convention, what happens with fandom conventions? And I think, of course, that ends up landing in the strength that I always tried to push. I never ran events that had a huge budget for talent, but we had culture. We had a scene. It's the social scene that makes the con.
That's right.
And I made a lot of shrewd decisions over the years when measuring things against the social scene. What can we kill? Can we kill the con suite? Yeah. At the end of the day, nobody really needs that. There are arguments to the contrary. There are plenty of reasons to have one. No fan should go hungry. I've already been down that road. You can hash that out in the comments.
But it's not the con's responsibility to feed people.
Exactly. Video rooms. Who the hell cares? We're all carrying a video room in our pocket.
And how many video rooms have you gone to at a con where there's videos running and not a soul
or like
in the room?
2 mega introverts asleep, including the guy that runs the room. So the things that we were willing to cut from our cons here locally, when we reorganized, moved things around, etc., those were the 2 things. I had eliminated the con suite from MTAC by the time we came downtown, and I was on the way to eliminating the video room if it made the difference between getting and not getting a downtown venue. And the leadership I had next to me was on board for that because of those reasons. You don't need things you can find for free on the internet now. Back when I came up in the late 90s, video rooms at anime cons were the only place you could see some things because that guy had that bootleg from Japan.
Yeah.
And you had to exchange VHS tapes in the mail with people. There was a lot going on. Now, I mean, even if it's not even on the up and up, you can see it for free on the internet. So why literally pay for square footage to dedicate to something that you can do? And Dragon Con was still doing video rooms, even up till last year, multiple video rooms, specialized video rooms. Now, granted, the bigger con has a little bit more clout. A lot of times, a big con, I remember Anime Weekend Atlanta had a lot of premiere availability where videos had only been seen in Japan, weren't released on video, but they got a copy of it. That's cool. If you can turn it into a film fest.
Yeah, if you can create an event around that viewing. Yeah, look, I was involved with a con where we had a huge space, and it built into the stage was this drop down, 50-foot high screen. I'm like, why don't we use this? Why don't we turn this into like a movie event?
Right.
A screening or a special screening. We had Kevin Eastman book. Why don't we show Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and let him provide commentary? I
had adopted, like, video screenings that matter should be part of major events. They should be in panel rooms or main events as the scale of the audience dictates that they should be. Because at the end of the day, if you're at a con and you're not providing video and audio reproduction for your panelists, you've missed the boat on the entire century, right? Like, anybody that just comes and talks at a panel at this point, I'm real iffy on that. You got to be real expert and real academic to just sit and talk. You better bring some slides. You better have a room full of props. You better have a surprise visit from the stunt dog for Benji. I don't know what the hell it is, but you better have something.
Recreate special effects with no special effects cameras.
There you go. Otherwise, you need to bring a freaking video. You need to bring some slides.
Well, or you have to be a professional communicator, storyteller, entertainer, etc., to capture the audience.
Right.
But
so the facility needs to exist to put video everywhere. You don't need a video room.
And I would say a lot of panels, a lot of programming tracks can be cut.
Yeah. And the reality is something is going to replace social fandom events. I have ideas for that. I'm going to tell people like you about those ideas. I'm not going to tell people like you about those ideas because I know there are a whole bunch of you out there that have been suffering from a lot of imposter syndrome since the day you landed in my spot, and I'm not helping you cure that. But one day, people that are thinking about this stuff are going to bust out in the next 2 years with new formats, new concepts. And I think there's a very interesting new future where fandom, since it's popular and it's mainstream, meets with other things that are popular and mainstream.
So let me ask you about that, though. So one of the things that I've hypothesized is that if we're looking at a year or two before major fandom events return, what percentage of that fandom community do you think, they're the people that I call the bandwagoners, what percentage of them do you think are going to move on and find something else?
Right.
Or just stop caring?
The rabble versus true believers. Well, I mean, if you look at Dragon Con goes virtual, I think, and please, somebody can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think my peak that I witnessed was 500 or 600 people streaming at any given time. Now, that is 500 or 600 out of 80,000 attendees.
Right.
Now, we all know that there's a certain amount of attendees at a scale event like Dragon Con. They're just there because it's the cool party in town. We've all seen
or
them.
They were dragged along by a spouse or a friend.
There's the collateral attendees, and then there's the people that are like, hey, what's going on in Atlanta this weekend? Oh, that Dragon Con shit is cool. I'll pay for one night to get there, get completely off my ass drunk, and take pictures with hot girls dressed as Wonder Woman or whatever it is that they're doing. It's the geek Mardi Gras in town. But if you look at that percentage, I mean, there are 1,000 people that volunteer for Dragon Con alone. Those are true believers. The volunteers are true believers. So if you take 600, let's even be generous, a whole 1,000 live viewers at once, which I don't know that they hit, and they will have the data, and they will hopefully tell people about the data. What percentage of that is the existing family, right? What percentage of that is the loyal volunteer crew versus random attendees? What will be the later viewership of people that said, you know what, this is the first weekend I've been at home, I can listen to Live on the Green instead, or I can go visit my family instead. I'll catch up later. I'll buy a $10 streaming membership and I'll go watch everything after the fact. There's going to have to be a reckoning of numbers, but I think there's a certain amount of culling the herd of the non-true believers.
Well, so that's an interesting observation because, I'm a member of one of America's mega churches. We have on Sunday morning 12,000 people attending between two buildings, and with COVID they had to go virtual. And I'm watching the numbers, and it's 200 or 300 people watching the virtual services at any given time out of 12,000. So that observation holds true with Dragon Con.
Was that 12,000 in person?
Yeah.
Wow. That's impressive.
Yeah, it's one of the 3 largest churches in the country that is an actual church. Joel Osteen.
So, when you look at...
Did I just name a name?
Yeah, but that's okay.
That's okay.
When you look at the fall off, I'm very curious to know who the people were. Now, we all know, I mean, I've run events 20 years. I'm not 100% transparent. We haven't been able to get reliable attendance numbers out of any Nashville convention that's run by fans, and well, hell, not even a corporate convention. The last corporate convention in this building behind us flat lied about their attendees. So we don't really know the real numbers. We don't expect anybody to say anything real about the numbers. But I would challenge the streaming Fandom events to just be real and give us the numbers, because I think it's going to be very interesting for those of us that are trying to predict and read the tea leaves. What was the breakdown, and why was there a breakdown of potential attendance? Because I would have thought, I expected Dragon Con to have technical difficulties based on demand. I really did. I thought, oh, we're about to find out what Discord can take or what Facebook Live can take. And those infrastructures prevailed because I don't think it was really pushed, but I'd be interested to see, you know, what's the real breakdown. And what was the dedication? I mean, there was a whole day I didn't even watch a single thing on Dragon Con.
Well, and see, okay, so I'm someone who loves going to Fandom events.
Right.
I love going, I love seeing people, I love being seen.
Right.
And I didn't participate in one thing at Dragon Con Virtual.
Yeah.
Now, I was at a small con myself all day Saturday, but you know, I've not been one who's gotten into the virtual conventions,
right.
And I've participated.
And it's tricky. I mean, the energy is not the same. The energy is not the same. The opportunities aren't really there the same way that they're supposed to be. I mean, you don't really get to see people. You don't really get to hang out with people.
Right. So for me, there's very little draw for a virtual event because the news or you know. Stuff that people are going to talk about, I can find elsewhere.
DC Fandom for me was about maybe a couple panels. I accidentally attended the Voices of Batman panel. I didn't read the description. If it was disclosed that it would be international, I had no idea. Okay, so I thought, okay, this is going to be Voices of Batman. It's going to be, you know, Kevin Conroy and a whole bunch of other dudes that have been Batman. Whatever. I've watched these guys' careers. I've proposed half of them to be booked at my own cons. I don't need to know anything about this. And I accidentally watched it while I was cutting some carpet for my Dragon Con carpet store. And it was actually international voices, and it turned out it was kind of entertaining because all of a sudden you've got, like, you know, Spanish language Batman. You're like, "Donde está Robin?" You know, and like, okay, this is kind of cool. And then you have these guys, you can actually see them, and you can kind of start to compare, like, okay, who are these people? And what do they feel like in their regular life? That was cool, but mostly I was there to see, like, what's new with Wonder Woman?
Right.
What's new with Batman? I want to see that damn Batman trailer before anybody else. That was the stuff. Ultimately, we had it on for a day. I only cared about 3 hours. And then Dragon Con, the same deal. I may have watched about 3 hours, but I was aware of it all weekend. And that's a piece that you don't have to struggle with. The in-person con, you have people trapped in the building. You have people doing things just for the sake of doing them together. They are going to be there whether they like it or not. It's like my theory of concert festivals. I figure at any given act, the middle third of the audience are just the people that are diehard fans of the band that's coming up in 2 hours, and they're just trying to inch closer to the stage.
Yeah.
There's a certain amount of people occupying space because they're there. And you don't get that online. You get very selective and pick and choose streaming content, which I don't know how that figures in the future, and I don't feel like our traditional model that we knew is going to be what prevails.
I think there's going to be a hybrid. I think we will come back to gatherings, but I think the virtual aspect is here to stay. Mm-hmm. I really do, because so many organizers and producers have kind of found this. Yeah. Yep. And so I think that's going to stay. But here's something else to consider that I just thought of while we were talking about this. You know, we're talking about Dragon Con and the impact of Dragon Con going virtual, but you know, outside of the southeast of the United States, Dragon Con really doesn't have that much impact.
Yeah.
I mean, people outside of the southeast, 5 hour Atlanta circle, you know, And the same thing's true of, you know, they might know San Diego because that is a nationwide thing, but, you know, people don't know about
world famous to some extent.
Yeah, they don't know about New York Comic Con or C2E2.
Well, and let's face it, it wasn't San Diego that made San Diego famous worldwide. It was the partnerships with the media conglomerates,
the studios,
the giants, bringing those panels into that con. I always try to tell people San Diego could have been Dragon, San Diego could have been New York, San Diego could have been anything in Texas, any place that happened to get industry support to have 8 A-list actors show up, sometimes on a surprise whim, to talk about relevant, current, now, or forthcoming content. It's all about that partnership level. It's all about that cohesiveness, and it appears that that steam was taken right out of them. Probably because of an industry that wasn't very sure of itself.
Yeah,
you can't really have a Black Widow panel that's just a knock-down, drag-out panel if you still don't know when you're going to release your damn movie.
Yeah, Hollywood doesn't know what they're doing right now.
Right.
And that's why I think Tenet is so important. I think that's why I think Mulan is so important, which I saw both of over the weekend.
It's a good thing we decided to segue to that, because that's in my notes. Did you look up any of the box office?
You know, I saw that Mulan did $6 million overseas. They haven't released
Is that
any
streaming or in person?
No, in person.
That's the non-Disney market.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah, no, it hasn't.
Non-plus.
It hasn't opened in China yet. That happens next week on September 11th of all days. Opens in China
this Friday.
Yeah. And
I would expect Disney to pad the virtual numbers or the streaming numbers.
Well, they haven't released them at all.
I know, and I don't know if they will, but I would expect them to potentially pad. If we get numbers out of Disney for Disney Plus, I think we're going to get a collective. I think there's going to be a percentage of the population that thought signing up for Disney Plus would get them Mulan. Then they learned they were wrong, and they still paid $30, or they didn't pay $30. But there's going to be a new subscriber spike, and they're going to count all of it and credit Mulan for it. In the same way that Netflix had an explosion with House of Cards. Netflix knows that they gained 9 million subscribers because of House of Cards Season 1. And I think Disney's going to have that same knowledge.
Well, you know, and you know, I kind of judge success of movies and Hollywood properties, TV and whatnot, by the social media buzz I'm seeing. Mm-hmm. And I'm seeing a lot of my friends who ponied up the extra money to see Mulan.
Yep.
Now, you can wait until December 4th and see it for free if you're a Disney Plus subscriber.
And there are a few people that I've had tell me straight up, I'm going to stream it for free on a bootleg service and steal it. And I don't support that at all. I get mad when people tell me that. In most cases, unless what's available is dog shit, then I'm okay.
Yeah, but
let's if you can't get a good version of an old cartoon and you really need to just pirate it, it's kind of the publisher's fault for not providing you an avenue.
Well, but let's think
a brand new
this.
film, no, don't.
Yeah. So let's think about this for a minute. So, you know, everyone's all upset about Disney Plus adding that $29.99 to download Mulan. And
I'm more upset that it was so damn hard to do it.
I
was literally sitting there with my money, waving it at the TV. Not really, but as literal as you can get in the digital world. We opened our Samsung TV, went to Disney Plus, and there it is on screen, and it says, watch the trailer. I don't want to watch the trailer. I want to watch the damn movie. Where's the buy button? And then I dig a little deeper and find out, oh, I have to open it on an app on my device.
Oh,
then I have to buy Premier Access on the device. Then I had to log out and back in on the TV app, and then a button has appeared to play the movie.
That's way too hard. So they'll get backlash from that.
Ridiculous.
Because
how did your buying go?
Well, see, we went to a friend's house.
Oh, they already.
And they had already.
You didn't know how hard it was to give Disney your money.
Because Amazon
never
Prime,
make it hard to give somebody your money.
Please, Disney, fix that, because Amazon Prime. We've bought a lot of the new release movies that went to video on demand.
Yeah.
And they make it super easy. It's in-app.
Show me the movie,
click,
one click, done.
Yeah. And that's what Disney Plus needs to do.
I was appalled and amazed that it was that difficult to give Disney another $30.
But, you know, here's what we did, right? So we had 8 of us splitting $29.99.
No brainer.
Yeah, no brainer. Because
that's a second run theater kind of cost.
Yeah,
like that's nothing.
$5. I mean, less than $5 each.
Yep.
And you know, people don't realize, because I saw a lot of butthurt people going, Disney promised that we would have everything on Disney Plus for free, but they would need
$10 a month. Well, you already pay for Amazon Prime. You still have to rent movies.
Yeah, and Disney never, ever promised that you would have first-run theatrical releases for free.
It was always the library. It was a little bit of security against the vault, even though I entirely expect them to vault and redeploy classics over time. When it gets boring, when they aren't seeing an uptick in subscribers, you watch. They're going to pull stuff into the vault. You're going to look it up, just like a lot of the stuff they don't have a license for, and it tells you a date. You're going to look it up, and you're just going to say, this title is in the vault until July 4th, 2024, when it comes out of the vault. And then you'll be watching your terrestrial television broadcast, if anybody still is by then, and you'll see an ad, Cinderella out of the vault, just like the old clamshell Kmart ad for the video for 6 months. It's going to sit on the shelves and rake in the dough. They know their old tricks. They're just going to make them digital.
Yeah. And Disney had no idea that COVID was going to come.
Right.
They've invested $200 million into this movie. They've got to make back that investment, and they can't make it back by making it free to Disney Plus subscribers. Yes, they'll get an uptick in Disney Plus subscriptions.
The only disappointment
but that's not going to cover the.
They didn't have a theater alternative. I would have gladly seen it in the theater because we saw Tenet 2 days later.
Yeah, they should have had a theater alternative, but
also was an important experiment for them.
Yeah,
and it was less trouble to just say, you know what, we picked our horse, we're going to ride it.
It was. So, when we saw Trolls World Tour at a drive-in theater.
Nice.
Because that got released to theaters a week or two before the shutdowns.
Right.
And so
Trolls was kind of a casualty of.
Yes, but what they found out was they, on a family-friendly animated film, which has a relatively low budget, they could release it direct to video on demand and make money.
Obscene bank. And I think it did as good or better than the first Trolls in a theater.
Yes, it did.
And this would cause all kinds of controversy and butthurt across the industry, some of which is valid, some of which is just dumb. But let's talk numbers for a second, because I don't want us to go too far over our time. We want to stick to it roughly an hour. I looked up Tenet today. Tenet is at 20.2 domestic. 152
higher
million.
Than I would have thought.
Me too. 152 million worldwide. Last year was a weird mixed bag. Last year, of course, I would have been at Dragon Con, so I didn't give a shit what was in the theater. Angel Has Fallen, Lion King, and Hobbs and Shaw were all in theaters. Angel Has Fallen was a movie I didn't even realize happened. It's sitting in my Netflix list right now. I halfway thought it was a Netflix original. I didn't notice a peep about it. All three of those, Labor Day weekend, with one of them being new, were a $32 million take. Angel
combined?
was $15 million, yes, combined. So, really, year over year, now I didn't go back 10 years, but year over year, 19 to 20, Tenet arguably blew out a Labor Day opening in a year of pandemic.
Wow.
Which is kind of weird, since my son and I were like one of 6 people in the theater
Same
on
here.
Labor Day.
Same here.
I don't know how that worked out. But and
that's domestic?
The 20 is the domestic number. 152 worldwide, which doesn't surprise me because some countries have their act together and they've been able to pack
Okay,
people
so
into theaters.
maybe let's think about this. So Hobbs and Shaw, Lion King, and Angel Has Fallen, they're all competing against each other.
Which was dumb.
Really?
But the first 2 of those were already out, and those 2 made up half of that.
Okay.
Angel only was half of the rest of that 30.
So Tenet really had no competition. You had Unhinged,
right,
which came out, a week or 2 before.
Most people watch the trailer and do what we did and just wait for streaming.
Yeah, and it had no buzz. I'm like, okay, I saw this movie with Michael Douglas. It was called Falling Down.
Exactly. And now it's just fat, angry Russell Crowe in a pickup truck. So,
And so Tenet really had, and what was the other one? Notes on a Bathroom Wall?
Something. And then, of course, New Mutants has been sitting there for a minute.
And
it wasn't that great. I took your review and decided I'll stream it later.
Yeah, I went and saw New Mutants, and it is a rental or a stream probably, and will be adequate. But yeah, that surprises me that Tenet has
blew it up.
Yeah.
And here's what blew my mind also about going back to the movies. So about 2 or 3 weeks ago, my son and I went to the Opry Mills Theater here in Nashville. It was soft opening weekend. There wasn't a lot. There wasn't really anything new. Maybe New Mutants was out. They were filling up the theaters with old movies, and my son and I had to have a little arm wrestling match at home. I wanted to see Empire. He wanted to see Deadpool. We've seen both of those movies, half dozen times. Well, Empire a dozen times. My thing was, hey, it'd be kind of fun to see Empire Strikes Back in the theater.
On the big screen, yeah.
His whole thing was, I never got to see Deadpool because I was too young to see it in a theater. You wouldn't let me until you could see it, and I could watch it at home. That's fair. So I said, let's go Deadpool. We were the only people in there. It was so fun because we were the only people in the theater. We spent like $9, $12 on the whole thing because they were doing discount admission. And it was a great chance to try out theaters as they soft open again. And what I found out from talking to the staff, my first thought when COVID hit was live events and seating.
Yes.
How are we going to manage, and whoever contemplated the concept and the variables in a seating plan that has to provide for social distancing? Because if you buy a concert ticket or a movie ticket, you're talking about a seat or two, and then you got to deal with that variable. Okay, did you buy them at once? Okay, here they are. What's the radius? So I asked the guys on the way out, I said, how does this work? I noticed that when we bought online, there were rows that were blacked out. And then you told us that there would be 2 seats in either direction that were blacked out. So what's automatic and what's physical manual labor on the tech? And they explained the theater manager has to black out every row manually. The system after that does a buffer. So if you buy 2 seats together, you get a 2-seat buffer on either side. You've already got row buffer behind and in front of you. That actually kind of works, and luckily the theaters have been smart enough not to kill the sweet spots with their dead rows. But theater managers are not terribly bright from a technical aspect, and I entirely expect some theaters to black out their best row, which will be a crime, and I will rail about it later on another video. But we were really pleased and surprised at how that worked. The guys let us know one problem, though. Subscription-based theater accounts where you have a membership and
like
you can
the Regal
go
Unlimited
a certain amount of time, you have to buy individually, and your wife, best friend, kid, they have to buy individually, and that results in a 2-seat buffer between you that you can't avoid because of the fact that you made a separate purchase.
I don't know that that's such a bad thing.
It's not terrible because they said really people that want to sit together can just occupy the empty seats anyway.
Yeah.
So it works itself out, but it creates a customer service load for them. As far as like the staffing is concerned, the old dude that tore our tickets a few weeks ago, I said, how's it going? He said, well, it's okay, but we lost everything we ever knew. And I said, you got a point. There's a young workforce in the theater. Typically it's somebody's first or second job. Awkward teenagers don't really know how to talk to people, don't know how to do a job. They barely know how to drive and clock in on time. And now you've had them off work for 6 months. They forgot everything they ever knew. And so this older gentleman, kind of, a more seasoned professional, he pointed out, like, we're having to reteach everything. Oh, okay, I get that. The seating was something I thought would be a huge challenge, and turns out it's not terribly bad. When we went to see Tenet, I was going to do a whole separate rant video about this, and I decided just to sleep on it and get over it. I encountered what I would consider a horrendous technical problem. So I understand it.
You're a snob.
I'm an AV snob,
yeah.
But on top of that, I'm trying to do what's right for working people and the economy. So I made deliberate choices. I chose to go to the theater close to me because it's the closest economically, and it was going to be cheaper than going to the Dolby Cinema 20 miles away. I ended up accidentally finding out that I had a discount from Fandango that made our Tenet excursion was $12 for the 2 of us. Crazy. But I know at every one of my local theaters which auditorium I will and will not sit in. So at Bellevue, I chose theater number 1. Auditorium number 1 is the big giant theater with all the biggest equipment, the biggest screen. We always get the handicap row. I'm not going to explain how that works. I don't want other people to do it, but we figured out a system for getting the handicap row that ensures us a better movie-going experience. I'll tell you later, of course.
You've told me about that.
So we had this whole thing planned out, and then I said to my son, let's only get a little bit of candy. I'm sure that they'll put my face inside the box office at every theater after I say this, but I don't buy theater candy. I wear cargo shorts, and I bring my own damn candy because the candy's obscene. It's crappy candy. I would rather buy organic dark chocolate or some snooty thing to bring with me and know that my junk food is at least not as bad for me. I will buy a drink all day. I buy drinks every single time. Son gets a drink. But I said, you know what? We don't ever want popcorn at the theater, but why don't we get popcorn this time? Let's get drinks and popcorn to add a little more juice to this weekend, a little more of a symbol that we're recovering from this. We're going to do more to do our part. I wore my bandana, which, yes, there's a study that says this is not as effective as his face-based mask, but it's nominal. It's not the same as the gaiter, which is basically like breathing through pantyhose. But they had a sign on the door that this wasn't good enough. I had to take a disposable mask. Okay, whatever. That's extra picky. I don't really know if I agree with that. I'm middle of the road enough to think that that's unnecessary. When you're not talking, this is fine. So don't talk to me and we'll all be fine.
Which you shouldn't be doing in the movies anyway.
Ta-da! But I took the little mask, but then the guy said Theater 11, and I said, excuse me? It's Theater number 1. Like, trust me, I know. And he said, well, Theater number 1 blew. What do you mean blew? He said, the sound blew. As soon as we played the movie, it blew. What? You're going to need to explain this to me because there's no excuse for that. So he called the manager up, and the manager and I went off and had a conversation. I was hot. I was pissed. Because, A, that should not happen. From a technical standpoint, if you're an audiophile, you understand there's no excuse to literally blow equipment. You could have a problem, you could fix it, and you could cancel one show and have the next show. But to blow equipment means somebody failed. Someone failed to do their job somewhere down the line. It doesn't matter if it was the part-time minimum wage guy that turned it all on the first time it came back, if it was the long-suffering underpaid theater manager that had to try to blow the dust off that stuff and get it running again, or if it was the technician in the district that was probably neglecting it. And I say this because they bought Carmike, and I know AMC probably inherited the totally crappy technician culture that it had when I worked for Carmike. But no excuse. Now, tell the manager, there's no excuse for this, dude. We consciously chose this theater. We made specific timing choices. We ate lunch at a certain place at a certain time to go to the 3 o'clock show in theater number 1, and now you're telling me this, and I'm not even trying to shoot the messenger, dude, because it's not fair to you either. So after a little bit of debate, he gave us some tickets to use later, and he still honored the tickets we had, and we agreed to see it in Theater 11, which was a moderate downgrade, but livable. And we got our concessions, and we went in there. Trailers happened. I will be making a post, probably a blog follow-up, because I've talked about this horrible masking before, because it wasn't in the big theater where the image would have filled the CinemaScope proportion screen. It was in a smaller theater. It had letterbox, but also was already only on the middle of the screen. So we arguably saw this like reduced postage stamp, and I can't stand that. And I'm a big fan, and I don't think they have control of this anymore. When I worked in theaters, we had control of this with the lens. I'm a big fan of backing that off to fill up the screen if that's what's necessary. So they didn't do that. Old school, ultimately it meant that they were showing a flat film in a scope theater. Those of you that know enough know what I meant by saying that. But that was, I was going to let that go. And then the movie starts. And you know how intense that movie is.
Yeah.
You know how intense that movie is. The movie starts, and there's distorted static and multicolored bars on the logos for the studios. Now, at first I thought, okay, this might be effect. I told Alexander, hey, let's sit still. Let's see. This could just be the intro. Then we get into the opera house, and it's still that way. And I shoot out of my seat. I go outside, and I tell him, you got issues. You need to restart, fix it, restart. Don't fix it and keep going. Restart after it's fixed. So another guy's coming out of the theater, and I told him I got it, and he's like, yeah, I don't understand this. I was here when the sound blew like 2 days ago. So there's already a guy that's there for his makeup showing, and you're screwing up the video. And I don't know what happened because it's digital now, and I was in the film era. I could tell you what happened in a film problem on screen. I can't tell you about digital. It was either corrupt playback they couldn't have foreseen, or they set something up wrong. But here we are, and we had to, like, the dude had to come in the theater because they have internal entry for the booth. He had to fix it. He did fix it. He did restart it. Everything was okay. But it was super frustrating. I will say this, that movie is the loudest movie I've ever seen. It is relentlessly loud. It is relentlessly action-packed. There isn't a downbeat. You think the Dark Knight movies were intense? Nolan doesn't take a break. This movie pounds you in the face for 2 hours and change until it's done. It's a great movie, but do not go in there if you have a headache.
Well, and the only movie I've seen in recent years that had a soundtrack that was so intense was Blade Runner 2049.
Yeah.
That was a movie you had to see in the theater to experience the sound design.
Yeah.
But this had that same thing, and I'm sure that is what caused a lot of problems. They ran it for the first time in Theater 1 with that intense sound design, and boom!
But they
weren't ready for it.
Chances are it wasn't anyone's job at the local level to have made sure it was ready for that, but there's no excuse. And he said it would be time and 5 figures of repair costs before they could get it running. And I told him, if they inherited the culture that I used to have to work in, that shit's going to be down for weeks.
Yeah. And
that's unfortunate. Or they're going to make you put a movie in there and play it with a blown speaker, which they used to do to us in Carmike all the time. I don't know if any other theaters had that problem, but to me, you had months to get it together. And my big beef with AMC, I don't care about the stock price. I don't care about the struggles. I don't care about the bankruptcy flirtations. You are the people with all the money and all the power. Cut some executive salaries and make sure your damn equipment is ready to go. Because this was your big shot. And the third guy that came out of the theater on our way down the hall, once we had a guy from the theater, he comes out and he said to the theater manager, if you're trying to get people to come back to the movies, this is a hell of a way to do it. And I said, you know what, he's right. Absolutely the wrong first impression. And you had all weekend to have it right. And here we are on Monday. There were a lot of operational problems. And the manager of the theater told me he was there all summer by himself, trying to keep things running. And I'm not surprised by that. These companies are greedy, they're short-sighted. Every problem they have is generated by their own poor decisions. They make bad real estate decisions, they make bad design decisions, they have poor management, but they don't pay enough to have good management.
Do you know why they make those poor decisions?
I'm sure there are a litany of reasons.
2 words: customer service. And they've lost sight of that.
Yeah.
They don't care about their customer. They care about their bottom line.
Right.
But what they don't realize is if they care for their customer, the customer will care for their bottom line.
Right. Well, I learned another trivia fact about the cheapness of these theaters, or the unrealistic budgeting. I don't know if it's cheapness or unrealistic. I was having a conversation over the weekend with the same guy from production that I mentioned earlier. And he talked about he did bids for outdoor theater conversions.
Mm-hmm.
He bid on like 90 locations of theaters over the summer to produce an outdoor drive-in environment. Because if you think about it, if you're in Nashville, you know what I'm talking about. Hollywood 27 is just dying to have a drive-in. Look at the size of that thing. All these theaters have big parking lots. They could have converted to drive-ins. So companies like his that bid for the business, they would start out by explaining, this costs money, right? And they're like, oh, yeah, we got it. Give us the numbers. Once they saw the numbers, they freaked out and realized, oh, we don't know what shit costs because we've been insulated, and we can't afford to do this because we can only get 2 showings out of 3 days because of sunlight. So a lot of them didn't do it. And I've been asking all summer, like, why can't I drive down to Bellevue and park in the parking lot to support my theater, because it's a nice new theater?
Yeah.
I would have gone and seen a movie I've already seen.
Well, and
we had fun with it.
We did. We went to the drive-in theater down in Watertown and up at Starline. Yeah. Had a great time, and I can't imagine why I know for a while drive-in theaters had a huge boom. Mm-hmm. I don't know what that's going to look like now that some theaters
of them have reintroduced themselves. They're going to stay.
Yeah, and I think that's good.
Starlight's always been around. It's going to get a boost, I think.
And the experience is like nothing else. Mm-hmm. And it was just
and it's a completely foreign experience to anybody younger than us.
Yeah.
I mean, no one's really done that in their unless they stumbled on it. And
and the place was packed. It was sold out.
I still feel like there were some of them that could have rallied and done it. I mean, let's look at a company like Regal. We're not asking you to put a drive-in at every Regal. Just put one in Nashville. Shut down the other theaters. You should be saving enough money to offset that.
Up in Hendersonville, at Indian Lake, they've got a 5-acre parking lot behind the building.
That courtyard is gorgeous in front. They could have done a lot of things.
Well, The courtyard probably would have been difficult, but the parking lot behind
True.
it's 5 acres.
They could have done
put up a drive-in
the
right
drive-in first, and then they could have done the courtyard once the gathering numbers had been tweaked, or if they do get tweaked. But yeah, I'm glad to see theaters back. I'm worried that there's not enough content. I'm glad to see that they're playing old content. I hope the studios are hooking that up at a low rate to help the theaters stay alive. At this point, like for example, if you own Deadpool, what kind of dick are you for charging a theater to play Deadpool? Like, you've got Deadpool on every streaming platform and probably 5 times every Sunday on TBS at this point. So, you know, it shouldn't cost money for them to have that leg up. I'm looking forward to more. I don't really know what to expect, and I expect to see some theaters fail. But like cons, there are some theaters that needed to fail.
Yeah, I mean, there are. And you know, the future for movies is probably like the cons. It's going to be a hybrid model. You're going to have some limited theaters. You're going to have some drive-ins. You're going to have the video on demand. And I saw an announcement this morning. I don't know if it's official, that Disney is moving forward with doing the same model with Black Widow that they did with Mulan.
I'm in.
Yeah.
Oh, I'd rather watch that at home. I mean, okay, to be fair, I would rather watch any Marvel movie in a theater, but I would rather my inevitable second viewing be able to be at home. And, you know, where we are used to a culture where we see a movie in a theater, first run, then it goes second run, dollar theater, which are the ones that probably need to die off. I would be fine if all these bargain theaters disappeared and we moved to a model where you just rent that at home. But I would much rather see, like, you get a month of first run, and then you get a month of at-home $20 rental, and then it disappears, goes into that void where it's going to show up on HBO and 60 to 90 days,
Redbox,
whatever it is, right? Like, I would love to see the streaming piece become a piece of the equation, and I think the people that have their own platform like Disney add another layer to that, because when you paid $30 for Mulan, you got it before December, but in December everybody gets it. And that's almost, if you think about it, the exact same way it would have worked in the first place. They would have released it in the theater.
That's right.
And then in December, just in time for Christmas, you would have been able to be marketed all the data they gained from you. They would have been able to figure out how to sell you other things.
Well, it would be Christmas next year. There would be about a year-long delay between the theatrical release and the streaming release on Disney Plus. So everything has been kind of accelerated in terms of timelines as well.
And some of it's great, some of it's unfortunate, but I think ultimately the consumer's going to win when we look at the dust that settles.
Yes.
From COVID. In all sectors, but I think definitely in cinema, and really in fandom cons in a big way, depending on the innovators that step into the void. In live events, I'm concerned that there are going to be no winners.
No, there will be.
Except possibly record companies for concerts. But theater-wise, I'm concerned that actors aren't going to be the winners, playwrights and producers aren't going to be the winners, probably not even the people trying to keep the lights turned on, the rent paid. I don't know who wins in some of those scenarios.
I think the consumer does win. And even in live music, we're going to go to smaller, more intimate events where an audience member feels a greater connection and maybe even a true physical connection with an artist, because it's a smaller venue, a smaller.
And we were already headed that way. The resurgence of small venues, medium venues, amphitheaters that are, in our case, civic. So, Metro was sitting on that land already anyway. There are, they've got an investment in it, but they're still sitting on it. And it's easy to social distance in those cases because you're outdoors.
Well, and virtual streaming platforms have given voice to artists that couldn't reach wider audiences, so they win. The consumer wins because they have access to more product than ever before.
Well, and I think the hybrid model is a great way to handle the sold-out show.
Sure.
I've had more than one concert come to Nashville where I was real disappointed that I couldn't get in on the tickets.
Well, and look,
but if I could have bought a last-minute streaming ticket, I might have paid up to $50. I always hold $50 because that's the standard old-school pay-per-view, boxing, wrestling, etc.
Yeah.
So when everybody wants to whine about $20, $30, I'm like, I don't care. You got no case because we have a legacy of $50, $60 pay-per-views. So I would pay, and Elton John comes to the arena, I miss out on the tickets. I'd pay $50 for a really good quality broadcast.
When I was doing the Bombshell Kittens shows, we were booked at a con up in Louisville, none of our local fan base is going to travel to Louisville.
Right.
So we did two things. We made a show-only ticket available at the convention for people in the community who saw the advertising that I did.
Right.
And then we did a streaming ticket. This was 3 years ago.
Ahead of the game.
Way ahead of the game.
What's with these people with vision?
Yeah, and I charged $20 a head to watch the stream through, at the time it was Ustream. And, I'm going to do the same thing going forward. I did that a couple of other times. And
it's not a bad idea.
I mean, because you have, with the way fandom works now, yes, you have local fandoms, but thanks to the internet, you have national and global fandoms, and that's a way
everything
to give them.
Everything can be found.
Yes.
Everything can be discovered. Being able to reach that audience.
It's ridiculous to have, an album release concert here at the Country Music Hall of Fame that is an exclusive VIP ticket,
right?
But not create a virtual online experience.
Well, and it's the same principle. Like you watch, in this ballroom up top, and in that venue across the street. We've seen how many times we've seen CMA. We all tune in. Only a fraction of people are there.
Right.
So it really converts that model a little bit. And when you have a thing like that that's so big that there already is a broadcast over the air for free, I think streaming offers an upmarket opportunity there. A lot like the idea that we had a couple years ago for Hypericon of doing behind-the-scenes cosplay interviews that were available to a streaming audience sponsored by a corporate entity. That's the kind of stuff that you could see. Like, we all know award shows, they go run into the back and they stand around in a room and they entertain questions and they hold their award, and all the best comedy and gaffes and Jennifer Lawrence flipping birds, that happens behind the scenes.
And you don't see
if you could pay for a live membership to see that, I think people would pay.
And you don't see that until a day later after it's already been edited down.
Bingo.
And you get this the bite-sized bite, but if you can watch the whole thing live while it's happening, it's a huge opportunity.
There's an element of that, and I think what you said way earlier on about the companies that did the kinds of live media coverage and efforts that we were talking about, I think that's a big piece of that potential that you were talking about. I think that's a big piece of it. I'm
actually very optimistic about the future of the entertainment industry and the events industry. It's going to take a while to recover, but I think that we're learning so much through this that whatever the hybrid model is that we arrive at is going to be better for everybody at the end of the day.
I think you're right about that. It's rough right now, and that is absolutely an understatement. I am not, I know a lot of people that are really suffering, and it sucks.
Well, here we are on a 8 o'clock downtown Nashville.
There's one horse cart came through.
Yeah, and the street is empty, and we have a 10 p.m. curfew.
We are at an hour and a half of video. It might be a little trimmed by the time I edit, but we've really kept it flowing. I may be lazy and just post it as is, but thanks for joining in, and if you watched a portion or all of it, whichever, we appreciate your attention. And thank you for appearing on my channel.
Yeah, I love it, man.
For a little flip, and we'll do more of this, I'm sure. But if you are in this tricky part of the economics, we wish you the very best. We hope that you're getting everything you can to make it and get by. And if you're like me and you've been a little lucky, try to send some love to your friends that are struggling right now. And if you're like him and you have a day job to float your bills, be thankful for that. And we're all going to get through it together. Wear your mask, cooperate with each other. And,
support those Patreons.
There you go. Yes, absolutely. Hit those Patreons.
Or OnlyFans, whatever it is.
I bought this shirt right off. I set aside a budget for this past weekend. I bought this shirt, bought the Dragon Con shirt, bought lanyards, bought all kinds of stuff because I wanted to support what was going on. I way overpaid for some Dragon Con mead to get shipped to my house just to show support. You should be out there doing the same thing if you have the means. But anyway, good night, good luck, etc. See you later.